sort of segue into our first session, which we'll start now, which is how we can leverage behavioral insights for sales tax on services. And Dr. Sheraf Khan is going to take us through that.
Thank you, Sakab Saab, for this very comprehensive introduction. Aisha, if you can please put up those slides. So as Sakab Saab mentioned, this is supposed to be a conversation. So even though we have list of speakers under each panel, but please feel free to participate and jump in to any with any questions or thoughts you may have about anything we're discussing. But let me formally introduce the panelists that we have lined up for this. So we are joined in this session by Fawzia Iqbal. So ma'am, thank you so much for joining us. Ma'am Fawzia is an officer from IRS FBR. She has 20 years of experience in field of tax laws, audits, and enforcement. Currently, she's serving as Director General of KPRA. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today has come because of the efforts and initiatives that KPRA has taken. So I'll get into that and maybe appreciate the lead that KPRA has taken in introducing behavioral insights into policy making. So we'll talk more on that. In this session, we are also joined by Nurul Haq Baloch Saab. I'm not sure if Nurul Saab is here. Great, awesome. So Noor Saab is actually serving chairman of Balochistan Revenue Authority. He has held the position of managing director, BDP, Balochistan Public Procurement Regulatory Authority. He was also secretary finance department, health department, education department, and he's also served as project director for promotion of girls' education at World Bank supported project. Noor Saab, thank you so much for joining us. We would love to hear that what Balochistan has been doing in terms of increasing revenues, provincial revenues, especially sales tax and services pay, we would like to talk about. Then we have Dr. Wasif Ali Memon. Wasif Saab, thank you. Wasif Saab is the chairman and board of revenue. He began his career as an officer in Pakistan Customs. And during his 30 years of service, he has also served as chief collector of Pakistan Customs and member of risk management committee. Once again, thank you, Dr. Wasif, for joining us. Then we also have Dr. Javed Iqbal Sheikh. Dr. Javed joined civil services in 2001. He has 23 years of experience in working in revenue departments and is currently working as member policy at Punjab Revenue Authority. He's been in that role for the last 4 years. Thank you, Dr. Javed, for joining us. I personally learned a lot from Dr. Javed, and I look forward to his feedback today on what we're doing in KP. Then we have Fazal Amin Shah Saab. Fazal Saab, again, good to see you here. Fazal Saab is currently serving as Advisor Tax Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Revenue Authority. He has previously served as Deputy Collector and Inland Revenue Audit Officer. Again, thank you, Fazal Saab. Fazal Saab has been instrumental in designing the interventions in KP, and it's great to have him here today. We are also joined by Abdul Qayyum, who has over 15 years of experience in public finance, public-private partnerships, risk management, and public debt management. Currently, Abdul Qayyum Saab is holding a senior management position as the head of debt and risk management unit at the finance department of KP. And he has an additional responsibility of serving as head of BIU, this mind lab that Sakib Saab was talking about. So Abdul Qayyum Saab is actually leading that first behavioral insight unit in Pakistan. So great to have you, Abdul Qayyum Saab. And finally, in this session, among the listed speakers, we have Ali Javed, who is an economic advisor for FCDO and has previously worked as Deputy Program Manager at DFID and at Asian Development Bank. So again, thank you so much for joining this session. So let me reiterate, these are the speakers that we listed for this session, but I encourage all of you to participate in this session. I'm going to start with sort of briefly talking about the role of behavioral insights, how we think about them. Then we'll talk about what KP has done in starting or taking this initiative of implementing some of those insights. Right. So let me jump right into this. I think I don't need to spend too much time on this. Sakib Saab has done an excellent job at highlighting how provincial tax revenues as own source revenues are really small percentage of what we are collecting in aggregate. So in this figure, what I'm showing you, it's probably not very legible, but out of all the revenues that the provincial government receive, this is combining all the provincial governments in Pakistan, almost 85% of that comes from the federal transfers, right? So it's only the 15% that is currently coming from all sorts of provincial revenue collection. This session is particularly focused on sales tax and services. So currently, only 7% of provincial revenues are coming from sales tax and services. I would like to mention, though, that since 18th Amendment, provinces have done commendable job at increasing sales tax and services. The collections have been improving by a lot uh, all across Pakistan. But there is, again, still room for a lot of improvement here. There is room for bringing more insights and thinking of smart ways to increase this particular tax. In next session, we have Dr. Pracha talking about property taxes. Again, that's one of the sources which has high potential, and we'll see what are the challenges of raising that tax in the next session. But this session, we are focusing on sales tax on services and see what can we do in that domain. Right. So we have been talking about behavioral insights. Dr. Nabi and Dr. Sharani has both mentioned the power of behavioral insights. But just so we understand what we mean by behavioral insights, it's basically anything that can help us understand human behavior, right? So a lot of the times we think that, okay, putting more taxes, penalties, audits, that's going to do the job. But if you look at real people's behavior, it's much more complicated. And economists, psychologists, neuroscientists, and many other social scientists have come up with theories and different ideas of how we can better understand how people make decisions, right? And those decisions could be at various levels. For example, when deciding whether I want to pay taxes, whether I want to declare my income, whether I want to actually go through the process of payment. So at any stage of this tax collection process, there are a lot of behavioral aspects involved, and behavioral insights is all about just understanding how people make decisions, and then how we can best as a policymaker, how we can best make these decisions easy, simple, and more streamlined for our taxpayers. Uh, right. So just to give you the sort of the popularity of these behavioral insights, uh, they have become really popular all over the world. So this idea of nudges started in the US. There's this guy at University of Chicago, Richard Thaler, who came up with this idea of that, okay, small interventions, behavioral insights can help change behaviors, can really improve outcomes in various domains. And that has, over the last decade, that has caught on, so that now we have over 400 behavioral insights unit all over the world. Okay, so it's in the developed countries, it's in developing countries, the medium income countries, all over the world. Sometimes these insights units are integrated in the government. For example, what we have in KP, this behavioral insight unit, this mind lab, is housed within the finance department. In other times, they could be private, they could be housed in academic institutions. World Bank has its own behavioral insights unit, embed. So uh, countries all over the world are using these behavioral insights unit to inform public policy or to improve behavioral outcomes. Uh, in terms of tax compliance, you can argue or you can ask, okay, what are the places or where does behavioral insights may matter? So this is the picture taken from actually World Bank's embed report, and this talks about what's the process of tax compliance looks like. And you can see that there are various stages of tax compliance. It could be about understanding tax process. So as a population, do they really understand what tax laws are, what rules are, what policies they need to comply with? How you frame those choices to people? Do they have knowledge on those? So these are all the things where one can think about, okay, what are the room for improvement, or how we can bring in behavioral insights to sort of change behavior in terms of understanding of tax processes. Then this decision to pay taxes. When people are deciding whether to pay taxes, what do they really think about? What are the behavioral factors involved there? So, so a lot of the times when I talk to taxpayers, I hear this that, okay, why should I pay taxes when others are not paying taxes, right? So this is a perceived social norm that people are talking about, that why I should be the only one who's going to pay taxes. So as a policymaker, you can think about how we can reach out to people and inform them about the social norms or about what others are doing within their jurisdiction that can sort of encourage them to also behave in a positive manner. Uh, you also hear people talking about, why should I pay taxes? What do I get in return? So this is a notion of reciprocity. Like, why, when I pay taxes, do I get anything in return? Do I get anything back? So thinking smartly about how people reason about these things and designing strategies or designing uh, interventions that can reach or that can address those concerns can offer a lot of potential. Similarly, when people are deciding when to declare taxes, the process of whether people can understand the process, whether there's this, if it's too complicated, nobody's going to pay those taxes. It's going to be a lot of bandwidth overload on people. Uh, it has to be very clear. People should have very clear instruction of how they're supposed to pay, what their liability is, where do they go need to pay that. So things like these, which seems like it should not be an issue, but there is an evidence that all of these small minor details matter when it comes to increasing compliance. Similarly, in the last stage of tax compliance, which is about actually paying taxes once you've declared your taxes, it's about what payment procedures are going to be followed. Where should I do? Should I go to the bank? Can I use some e-payment system? So things like those which can address these problems. The liquidity constraint also matter, which I think is very relevant in property taxes because it's this once a year tax that it might impose some liquidity challenges. So thinking of behavioral insights which can take care of whether people have money with them to pay these taxes can help, right? So again, I'm not giving you that this is the prescription, do this. Any tax intervention or any policy intervention involves understanding how people reason in a particular context, and then designing those interventions can help improve those outcomes. Here are a few examples that I've listed. I think Saqib Saab has already sort of talked about how behavioral insights have helped tax administrations around the world. The first example is exactly what Saqib Saab was talking about from Dominican Republic, where just informing people that if you don't pay taxes, it could lead to prison sentence, or if you don't pay taxes, your behavior or your performance will be shared with other firms. That sort of led to increase in revenues of more than $184 million. Like that's 0.2% of Dominican Republic's GDP. So it sounds like it's a small intervention, it should not matter, but here is one example which is showing that this small intervention, just telling people that this could be a consequence of your tax payment, that really pushes people to sort of change their behavior and pay taxes. Uh, it's another example from Peru where informing people, and this is relevant for property taxes, informing people that how others in their neighborhood are paying taxes or whether they are paying taxes, that led to 20% increase in their payments, right? So just a simple act of telling people that, hey, others residents in your neighborhood have already paid their taxes, why don't you also pay your tax, right? Just this act. So no hardcore enforcement, no hardcore audits, but that still leads to 20% improvement. That's substantial. This third example comes from Brazil, and this is about rewarding or engaging general population, engaging customers as auditors in trying to improve tax compliance process. So in Germany, they introduced this lottery scheme, kind of what Punjab has experimented in the past, uh, where they rewarded customers for acting as whistleblowers for the government. And that led to, so even after you take into account what did they pay for rewards, so after accounting for all the cost of running the lottery, the net increase in revenue was 9.3%. So this is net increase, right? So actual revenue increased by 21%, but after you take into account everything that was spent in running the lottery, the 9.3% increase in revenues because of running this lottery is a substantial improvement in revenues. We do have examples from Pakistan as well. Mazhar Wasim, who is at University of Manchester, has done a lot of work in understanding how tax compliance can be improved. So FBR's program, where they declare list of people who have paid their taxes on their website. So they evaluated that program, and they found that that program is actually helping improve tax compliance. So people once their name is put on their website, and then tax liability is shown there, that how much they paid, that sort of is helping create this social image, or this social norm of paying taxes salient in people's mind. So that's one example. uh, Another example comes from this experiment with excise and taxation that Adnan Kadir, Asim Khwaja, Ben Olken, like these guys did, uh, and they done this experiment of actually paying people incentives, monetary incentives for their performance. But they also tried that, okay, when they really understood, and that's I think what we need to understand, that when we're deciding behavioral interventions, we need to think about what whose behavior we are trying to achieve, trying to change. So in excise and taxation inspectors, they figured that many of these inspectors really care about which jurisdictions or which areas they're posted in. So they incentivize postings as part of this incentive scheme, that if people perform better in their circles, they could get the posting of their choice, right? So that was really a motivating factor, and that led to improvement in tax revenues by more than 30%. So here are some examples, and as Saqib sir was also saying, that these are examples which are just tip of the iceberg. Like, there are so many other examples one can find about how behavioral interventions are helping change the world or improve tax compliance all over the world in various contexts, right? Uh, One thing I want to highlight, and I know I am probably taking a lot of time on this, but one thing I want to highlight, and this is important because whenever we are trying to evaluate these policies or evaluate these interventions, it really matters how we implement them, how we test them. And scientifically, what has been found to really work is this method, what we call randomized controlled trials. So this method is a gold standard of evaluation, right? So what we do in this method is we take the sample, we take the population, and we just like you test out a medicine, you give it to half of the population, don't give it to the other half, and then you sort of track them. You see कि जिनको medicine दी थी, people who were treated, how their performance turned out as compared to those who did not, who were not administered the medicine. So it's a similar idea that when you're testing policy interventions, let's try and do it in a systematic manner so that we can tell what was the impact of the intervention, and we can learn from the process. I think the important thing is that we learn what was working, what wasn't working, and think of it as a continuous process, that we keep improving, we keep adapting. If we see something is not working, we decide, okay, this wasn't uh, uh, this wasn't very useful in this particular context because of these reasons, and then sort of acting on improving what was not working, right? So many a times you see that when we run these interventions, it turns out that they do not deliver these large impacts that I just showed you, like 30% increase in sales, 20% increase in sales. Sometimes it doesn't work that way, and then I'll give you one example of KPRA's experiment where the impacts weren't that substantial. But that means that we still learn a lot. It doesn't mean that you stop testing and you give up, that okay, it's not working. It's again, it's a continuous process, and the trick is to see that, okay, what worked and what didn't work, and what is the next thing we can do to improve these outcomes. There's only this process of scientific evaluation and trial and error that sort of tells us what is working and what is not working, right? So let me now get to two experiments that KPRA has taken a lead on. So the first experiment that that was implemented was about utilizing behavioral SMS to enhance text filing in KP. So the idea is very simple. It's every time before the deadline to pay taxes, we observe in KP that people do not file, or firms do not file their taxes within the due date. And sometimes they go over due date, sometimes they never file. So there's a very simple thing you can do here. You can just send a reminder to people that, hey, the deadline is coming. Please make sure you file your taxes by this deadline. So in KP, with the assistance of B4D that Saqib Saab was talking about, behavior before development, the nudge unit from Qatar, uh, this experiment was designed where they thought of sending these reminder messages to these firms before their filing deadline, and they had three variation of those messages. So they went with this baseline message where just telling people that, hey, you should file your taxes. This is the deadline, and this is where you can file your taxes. So just very simple thing. There was this reciprocity channel that they were trying to activate here as well, where the idea was that you tell people that, hey, when you pay taxes, this goes and funds things like Sehat card and KP, right? So telling people that where their money is being spent, the idea was that this might encourage people to pay taxes. And finally, the third intervention that they tried was about this idea of loss aversion, that you tell people that, hey, if you don't pay taxes, there are going to be penalty on you, there will be fines on you. So whether that works or not. So they send these very different messages to different firms. So KP has about 18,000 registered firms. So this was done to about 1,800 firms got one message, some other 1,800 got other message. And they combined this base reminder message with warning message. And warning message was only sent to firms which did not file before the deadline, right? So the combination of these messages, they were tried. And I'm running out of the time, so I'm going to just jump to the main parts here. It turned out that any of these messages did not have a lot of impact. So it's not कि आपने एक message भेजा and that completely changed everything. But what we learned from this experience is that, of course, SMS may not be the great medium to send these messages. A lot of these people may be spammed by all these messages they're getting, so maybe they're not reading them, maybe it's not working. So maybe getting official letters would have been more effective, right? So this has not been tested experimentally, but again, this is one of the findings from this thing. We have also done some focus groups to understand what worked, what didn't work. It turns out a lot of people think that a lot of firms, when you talk to them, they say that we don't really do taxes ourselves. We have hired our consultant, they deal with everything, so we never care about any message or any SMS that we were getting. If we had got the letter, we would show it to the consultant, but this didn't work. So again, this was a good finding. This is something we can learn from, and then move on to trying new things which may have more potential. In the last 3-4 minutes, I want to talk about this thing that we are now implementing. And I want to thank, again, KPRA for leading on this. The approval process for this is already underway. We have spent a lot of time designing various aspects of this scheme. And the hope is that within few days or within a month or so, we'll be able to actually roll out this experiment. So if you have any thoughts on this, that will be a great time to contribute, because this is an experiment which hasn't happened yet, and it's going to be launched very soon, depending on when we get the approval, which is hopefully very soon. But the idea here is to run a reward scheme, the kind of what I talked about in Brazil's case. And here the idea is, let's engage people, let's engage customers in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to act as the agent of the government. So every time you go to a restaurant and you shop for a meal, you buy a meal, the idea is to see whether whether you as a customer can help the government and report this transaction. So when you are buying a meal, there's a sale happening, and that sale may not be reported to the government at all, government all the time, right? So these firms have incentive to hide their sales. So the the thing we are trying here is how we can engage customers to help report these transactions, help report these sales which are happening to the government, and see whether that improves tax compliance or not, and not just tax compliance, just overall whether it improves formality, whether it encourages firms to issue formal receipts more often, right? Whether it improves the culture of or the image of KPRAs among the population or among the firms. Uh, so there are many aspects of this tax compliance that are involved, which we aim to capture in the scheme. And the idea is that we are going to advertise the scheme in in the random half of restaurants in KP. And whenever a customer reports a receipt from a particular restaurant, that becomes part of this reward scheme. And every month we are going to have these rewards. So far what we've agreed, this is KPRA's suggestion, that we go with 50 prizes of 10,000 per month. And because this is run as an experiment, the plan is to just run this lottery for 3.5 months, 3.5 months, and see whether this thing can really improve or change tax compliance. Depending on what we learn from this, of course, the idea is to plan a bigger scheme or a bigger lottery, which may have a lot more reach as compared to this one. Right? So 50 prizes every month of 1,000 each. We are doing this for all the restaurants in KP. Either some of these restaurants are already integrated in a way that they have their point of sale devices. So those are part of it, and many restaurants in KP are not integrated. They're not part of these invoice monitoring systems. So they are also allowed. We are keeping, again, using this idea of behavioral insights. We are keeping these receipts submission system very simple. We are allowing people to just use WhatsApp to submit their receipts. So keeping it as simple as possible. And again, we have, with this reward scheme, we are also trying to learn what is the optimal combination of enforcement with this, right? So just rewards by itself may not work if there is no follow-up on those receipts, if there is no action by KPRA on enforcing those reported receipts. So we are combining both enforcement and the incentives for consumers as part of the scheme. We are also going to run a lot of surveys to understand what is happening, how people are reasoning, how they are participating, to sort of see what really is changing on the field in real time. Let me just stop here. I know I've gone overboard, so I apologize to the organizers for that. Although I'm the moderator for this, so I need to keep time. But I wanted to share what we are doing so that it gives you a good sense of how we're thinking in KP. And if you have any suggestions, or if you have anything to add, we can, maybe this is a good time to incorporate that into our thinking. So let me stop here now, and I'm going to first open this to the panelists who can jump in and share any thoughts they may have about using behavioral insights, and in particular about what we're doing in KP with the assistance of KPRA. So let me invite the panelists first, and then we can open it to the whole room.
Dr. Afghan, if I can just quickly add a note. You see, when we first conceived this workshop, the idea is not just to look through how provinces can increase the tax effort through the prism of behavioral insights. It does seem that way, that, we focus entirely on behavioral insights. But, by the fact that we have such high level representation from Sindh, from Balochistan, sorry, Nurullah Baloch Sahab, I missed the chairman, BRA is here as well, and then from Sindh, from Punjab, really we can, one of the things is to sort of seed a conversation of what works or what is in the pipeline, and how other provinces can benefit from what is working in the other. So do not feel restricted just to behavioral insights. It'll be great to talk about having a general discussion on sales tax and services, how provinces can improve the efficiency of that, and then property taxation. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very inciting curtain raiser on the workshop. I just quote an anecdote. In the era of Musharraf Saab, there was an exercise started for documentation of economy. And I and Fazil Amin Shah were co-working in Sales Tax Collectorate, Peshawar. Incidentally, IRS department has drafted a notice. It is in a lighter pen. They have started the notice, Mubarak ho, Mubarak ho, Mubarak ho, ab tax net mein aa gaye. The people were agitating about the documentation of economy, and they're asking about their assets, their income, and we have started like in the reverse direction. So it was a nudge which has proved counterproductive, and you know the results of that documentation of economy. Not, I think, 100 people or 50 people came into throughout Pakistan, and still those papers are either destroyed in the FBR old building once it was given to the provinces. The last time when FBR was collecting the sales tax on services for the provinces, they have given 8 billion rupees to Sindh with 5% service charges. And the growth for the last year, till last year, when SRB was collecting the taxes, it was 2800%. And we have collected 186 billion. This year target is 245 billion. So you can just see in one decade how much is the growth of the sales tax on services, despite of the fact that there are many sort of shortcomings, the tax behavior of the people, and especially, as you have pointed out, the tax morality. Whenever we ask someone to pay the tax, they say what we get in return. There is no health services. We go to the private hospitals. Our kids are educated in the private schools. There is no security of life and all that. So this is one challenge which we face. We try to wriggle out of that question that tax morality and expenditure is not our subject. We are just collecting the tax. But people just engage these two things which each other. And the recent things which happened in Pakistan, you can say. You can connect. I'm not going to make a political statement here. As far as you know that in OECD, there is the jargon compliance by design. So you go as much as closer to the business's paradigm. We have achieved this in case of the application rights, like Uber, Kareem. Uber is gone now. The Kareem is there. The InDrive and the Yangu, a new set of increase. It's totally their discretion. The calculation is there. The declaration is there, and even we are not going to do snap audits for that. And we just believe whatever they do because we have got the faith that they are rightly paying the taxes. Food Panda is another example. They are collectively paying. We have decreased their commission rate from say 8% to 3%. The commission with the home chef they are giving to, and there is an increase in the collection of taxes. So the basic thing is the rationalization of the tax rate. And SRB has got the lowest rate in Pakistan, 13%, with many substandard rates beyond, lower down than the 13%. So I think we should start with the premise that initially we have to go for the low rates. And what we do, we just impose the taxes on those people who are already paying the taxes without broadening the tax net. Here is the basic fault line of Pakistan lies. So we say that this person is already captured a captive audience for us, for audit and for inspection and for increasing the tax, so just go after him. And as you know, the service sector is very difficult to operate because there is a lot of cash and informal economy. So here there is a problem with us, and unfortunately we are not even synergizing with FBR. So FBR think that the provincial authorities are slightly adverse to them, and wherever there is a sales tax on services, they impose withholding tax. So again, the person who is paying the sales tax on services of certain rate and are compliant will be added by the withholding tax on that service in one way or other way. The pointation that the sales tax performance in retail sector is underperforming or under assessing, there is a lot of things which are out of the purview of the sales tax on services. The retail sector is totally out of us. It is with FBR. The hospitality sector, the hospitals, the education, they are totally out. The professional taxes, sometimes we are unable to get it. How can you get a tax from the advocate if he has filed a writ in the High Court? Because they are same, they are working together. And the stay is lingering on since 2011 when SRB was formed. The stays is still there. We cannot go to the doctors for the doctors' professional taxes, services taxes from the doctors and advocates. So I think overall we are performing. There is very great room for the improvement for the sales tax on services, and inshallah we will do that. And I can quote that not a single person in Pakistan or even in subcontinent except Maharashtra, they have done the GDP of the province. We quote and we start the discussion that how much is the GDP of the province. Kaisar Bangali Saab has tried, and if you are not got the figures of the GDP of the provincial taxes or the provincial GDP, how can you proceed with the estimates and the overall sort of persuade of the targets? These are some of the observations. Also,
Thank you, Wasif Saab. I think these are very useful. Again, we can. It sounds like behavioral insights. जो Sindh ने try किए हैं, that wasn't really effective. But I just like to add कि मतलब it really depends when you're designing these insights. We understand कि what the population is, how they're going to work, how they're going to affect them. But again, thank you, Dr. Wasif, I think, for sharing these experiences. This is very, very useful. Let me, Madam, आप add करना चाहेंगी, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll take a few minutes. As Dr. Nabi rightly pointed out, that fiscal deficit is the main cause of our economic crisis. And the revenue generation and mobilization is the only way out. And as Dr. Saqib has rightly pointed out, Saqib Saab has, that from decades and decades we are entangled in the debt problem, which is more than 500% of our GDP, and it is consuming more than 51% of our budget. Now, resource mobilization and resource generation is imperative for coming out of all this problem. But how to go ahead? When we see, as you all know, that tax non-compliance is a very complex and a wicked problem. And as you rightly said, that the behavioral economics, it serves a better tool, not only to enhance this awareness and also create a social change. When we see, there are several underlying factors, ranging from, as Dr. Wasif said, narrow tax base or complex filing system, and going to unawareness, unwillingness to comply. Now, why this is the unwillingness? We have seen that there is distrust of people in these public institutions, that would they judiciously and fairly spend, like when they are confident that all the money, all the taxes that they pay, they are judiciously and fairly spent. Obviously, that will build up their confidence. So I must say that citizen engagement, citizens' inclusion, participation, consultation, and cooperation in the form of, as you say, all these schemes is very much important, as they will feel empowered and they will gladly act as an agent of the government. And also, I must say that not only the citizen motivation or offering of financial incentives and rewards, but also I have seen in my career that the deterrence which is created by telling them the consequences, the legal consequences, the punishment, the prosecution, it really increases the compliance. And apart from that, I must say that now in today's era, it is imperative that we must create this deterrence, not only by this, telling them what will be the consequences, but building up our own financial institutions by financing in IT and knowledge management information systems that will enable us to measure this non-compliant gap and also to take evidence-based decisions. And I appreciate all the efforts that are being done in KPRA, and we are welcoming you, and we are here to cooperate in the other the schemes, financial incentive scheme that is being initiated in KP. But apart from that, I must say that there should be sustainable, reasonable spending, financial spending on the development of knowledge information and management systems. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just to reiterate, madam, I think जो KP में हम काम कर रहे हैं, the lottery scheme, जो reward scheme है, I think it's a great opportunity. FPR has implemented such a scheme, Punjab has done it, but there has been no formal evaluation of whether it worked, whether it didn't work, what were the problems with it. So KP is providing this opportunity where we can sort of systematically evaluate that what are the aspects of the scheme, and where it may not work in this particular setting, and then hopefully other provinces can also learn from it. So ma'am, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Let me move on to other panelists. Noor Saab, if you would like to add.
Thank you very much, sir. As Dr. Wasif said, I think first we have seen the organizational behavior. The case of FBR versus the provinces. For example, as Dr. Wasif said, in Balochistan before 2015, when the BRA came and the sales tax on services was started in collecting by the BRA, it was only 700 million, round about 785 billion rupees, which FBR collected on behalf of Balochistan and transferred to province of Balochistan. But right now, when I am speaking to you, 14,000 million we are collecting, and for the last year we collected 20,000 million rupees. So a case of FBR versus why FBR, if FBR has been collected on behalf of us, it would have been 5,000 million rupees, not more than that, but what we did. So organizational behavior, because the tax and finally the public, I will be talking about that. But secondly, the governmental systems also. For example, in Balochistan, we calculated that when we started the BRA share for the provincial in the share of the provincial whole taxes, it was only 21%. But right now, it is the biggest tax collecting agency for the government of Balochistan with 89% today. So just in 5 years, with this limited resource and human resource and organization, so organizational behaviors has a huge impact. Secondly, coming to the taxpayers' behaviors, I am just quoting with you. For example, sometimes it's not that the taxpayers don't have an understanding and just they want to know the knowledge of the laws and like that. I was Secretary of Finance at that time, and many of the organizations, industrial establishments based at Hub, they were coming to our government that you should collect the WWF or Worker Welfare Fund and like that tax. And even the biggest, huge organizations, it is not just a small organization, industrial establishment. I am not quoting that. They have a huge understanding of that. They have a lot of experts, tax experts with them. And they have been quoting in their financial statements submitted on the net, it is available, that we are not giving the WWF to the provinces, neither to the FBR, and we are just holding it. And that is 2.5 billion rupees. We are just holding, we don't know how to pay, whom to pay. And when we issued the notice, the same organization who was coming to our government and saying that you should have a WWF Act and like that and that, the same day, the next day, they were in the court against us. So a behavioral change is not in the organizational behavior, but also in the courts also. Huge funds, a lot of money are stuck up in the courts also in Pakistan due to these. It's just simple matter that the Balochistan government enacted its 2022 WWF Act, and you had been holding that we are to pay. Now the government of Balochistan is clear just to go to and pay, but they don't. Thirdly, coming to the public behavior, because from home we collect the tax from the public, and to home it should be expensed for the public. For example, for the property tax, it's a very real case for Balochistan, and we are working on that. We are working on many aspects, like on prize scheme, just with our own resources. We wish that someday you come to Quetta and guide us that what you can support us. For the property tax, for example, in the property tax is collected by the government excise and taxation department in government of Balochistan. It is just 190 million rupees, not more than that. Just a few areas of Quetta and Hub and like that. Every MPA and every the public representatives are very much fond of that to declare their areas as municipal corporations and municipalities and like that. But they don't know that they have to pay the tax. And why the people are not paying the tax? Because they know that the services, the property tax is actually for the local government. It should be collected by the local government. It should be expensed by the local government. But when the excise and taxation department is collecting it and it is going to the account number 1 of the government of Balochistan, no one knowing that where the tax is going. Tax is collected at the hub and Quetta, but it is expensed at Sherani and Panjgur and Job and everywhere. 190 million, nothing. But the people of Quetta and hub, they do understand that whatever we pay, it is not expensed on us. So the people, maybe the people want to pay the tax, and they are paying the tax in Pakistan. Billions or trillions of rupees are being taxed, but they don't have trust on us, on the government. Everywhere we go, in the case of the hub, for example, the main bridge between connecting the Karachi and the hub, it has been it was washed away by the floods 2 years back, and the same industrialists were talking to me that we are paying the biggest chunk of taxes to the federal government and to you, BRA and everyone. But for the last 2 years, they don't have a small bridge to connect the Karachi and the. So how they can? For the property tax, for example, what we are proposing to the government that it should be assessed by the local government chief officer, we call it, or whatever, the officer of the, it should be assessed by the same local council where the tax is to be collected. And then there should be some smart type of organizations. For example, we are approved that with 90% of the tax being collected, all the SRB, BRA, KPRA, and PRA, the Excise and Taxation Department, the Board of Revenues, billions of rupees having a budget, but with just 1 to 2% of the expenditure cost we are. So the assessing authority, because once a municipal corporation chief officer said that there is no property tax to be assessed, so there is no collection. The chief officer should be the assessing authority. Smart organization like BRA or SRB and whatever, but in our case, BRA will be collecting. The people will be going to that, it was assessed, it was self-assessment, firstly a self-assessment to the local council, and they went to the modern mechanisms of tools like e-payments and mobile payments and whatever we have, and the collecting agency, and again the fund going to that local council. Now, when the people complained that the services are not being provided in that particular municipal corporation, then the assessing authority is at that level. So they can go there and say, yes, sir, you have not paid any tax, so we have not collected, so we will not be providing services. So with these mechanisms, it can be. And the next should be that the tax, from where the tax is coming. For example, in case of our infrastructure cess, we have infrastructure on all provinces. And in that act, it is particularly mentioned in every act of that infrastructure says that it will be expensed on the particular infrastructure of that area where the tax has been collected, the cess has been collected. But it is again going to the count one, and it is being expensed to some other districts. For example, infrastructure cess comes in Balochistan from 6 districts, but they don't have that tax being spent on it. So the behavioral changes on the part of the public, I think we have to trust the public. They want to pay the tax, they are paying the tax by hook or by crook, whatever means. But I think that it is the spending processes. For example, the tax collected from that particular area, some part, visible part, some share which is allocated, that should be going to their district or municipal corporation or municipal committee, whatever from their taxes coming, so that the people have a trust. We have to build the trust. And for the prize schemes, I think it's a very good. I think we should have an assessment of the BR end. But again, we are going to establish a mechanism. For example, recently I held a discussion. I think we can build it. We talk with vendors. The vendors should be having a hardware and software installed at that, for example, restaurant. 1 rupee, it is still being connected on all the POS, I think. It is going to the restaurant, but rather than going to the restaurant, it should go to the vendor. We are talking some mechanisms with that. And again, a SMS should be giving to the public, the person who paid the tax. So that, and again, it's prize scheme and like that. So we are talking, but I think the behavior should be coming to the organizations that, and the spending processes, and even the courts and whatever, and everyone want to avoid the tax. For example, big taxpayers, not the public. Public pays the tax, but the big establishment don't want to take. So a behavioral change on that part. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Thank you, Nurul Haq Saab. I think a lot of what you've said make a lot of sense. In the next session, we're going to talk deeply about these issues of property taxes that you're alluding to. And I would love to explore with you, okay, how we can implement reward
Yeah.
scheme in Balochistan. I think that's there's a lot of potential of these insights. But let me move to Javed Saab, who's representing Punjab Revenue Authority. Javed Saab, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much for providing us this opportunity to study the impact of behavioral influence on the tax collection. Uh, I have one observation on the presentation. It is slightly unfair to compare federal revenues collection with provincial revenue collection because the revenue collection depends upon the subjects on which an entity can collect taxes. So the FBR is collecting taxes on goods and FBR is collecting taxes on income. And the provincial revenue authorities are only collecting taxes on services. And it is all, even on services, it is not collecting taxes on distribution services and retail services, which are actually services but are being taxed by the federation. So, in my opinion, it would be better if a comparison is drawn between a revenue authority, which is the provincial revenue authority, with another revenue authority. So, it would not be the right thing. Secondly, I am very appreciative of the scheme which KPRA has launched because it is based on this concept that tax collection is a complex phenomena and it involves 3 or 4 players and we have to change the behavior of all those players. So one way is that, but I think that the collection of tax from services must be considered while planning some behavioral change. For instance, in case of Punjab, we are collecting 240 billion rupees in tax collection, and when this sales tax on services was with FBR 2012, they were collecting only 24 billion rupees from all over Pakistan. So this is a change which needs to be considered. But in this 240 billion, the revenue collection from restaurant is very meager. It is hardly 1 or 1.5 billion. The restaurants, they reflect the masses, but the revenue collection is very negligible. However, it has a greater behavioral impact. But in my opinion, whenever such behavioral change should be planned, it should be targeted towards those sectors from which we are getting major share of revenues, because our ultimate purpose is to increase the revenue. We would also like to rethink this reward scheme. It was first introduced in Punjab and then it was stopped. But after your experience, we might again be thinking on that. Regarding the behavioral, since time has passed and new things have arisen, so we will review the new scheme. So, regarding the initiatives for the behavioral change which Punjab has taken and which all the other authorities have also taken, I would like to share them so that in future these may be assessed, and if they are found good, they can be also be as adopted by other revenue authorities, maybe provincial taxes, or it can be agricultural tax, or it can even be the services tax. Due to COVID, Punjab reduced its tax rate on 25 services out of 70 services from its standard rate of 16% to 5%. The resultant outcome in the coming years, which we have analyzed, was that our revenue increased in those services. These were smaller services which were mostly affected. The revenue was increased was more than 100%, and the tax base in those 25 services was increased. So, as compared to those where there was normal rate. So this support the idea of Wasif Saab that our tax rates are too high and any behavioral change, if targeted towards the tax, we did it accidentally because of COVID, but we have learned this lesson. And if the tax rates are lowered, then the taxpayers would be very willing to pay the taxes, or at least their willingness would be increased to some extent. In Punjab, the second initiative for behavioral change was made in the restaurant sector, which we later on extended to other sectors. That was, if you make your payment to restaurant through debit or credit card, then instead of 16%, 5% would be charged. So this also helped in increasing our revenues, and it also helped in increasing the tax base. And since it's a bit technical, but since the revenue authorities are sitting and they all know that since in restaurant sector the input which they claim is mostly not genuine, so by reducing their standard rate from 16% to 5%, that element was also covered. So this was a
A lot of concern about when you claim 5%, you can't claim input tax adjustments, right? So that's the law. So I think iski wajah se McDonald's and these big chains were sort of fighting PRA that we can't charge 5%. And a lot of them continue to charge 16%, even 5% was there. So how do you see input tax adjustment ka role with this?
So since we learn through experiments, so when we reduce the rate from 16% to 5%, this issue arose, and then we brought a change in our law in the very same financial years, in which we gave option to them that if you want to pay 16%, you can pay 16% also on debit and credit card. So we gave them an option because their concerns were genuine. And again, it is more academic that their input was 100% accurate because that was from import of goods. So their case has to be dealt differently from the input of a local restaurant. So we did it, and this is how it happened. Then the third behavioral change step which we did was that we stopped the assessment for more than 2 years. We did some assessments, but we stopped the assessment that the assessment work would not take place in particular sectors. So that also helped in bringing a behavioral change among the taxpayer to do away with their fears. It does not mean that we have compromised on the revenue. In every law, there is a limit in which the assessment work can be done. It is 8 years in Punjab. In other, it can be 5 years. So, giving them audit-based immunity for 2 years to will make them more encouraged to become taxpayers and more encouraged to declare their revenues, and after some time they can come up with that. And the another behavioral change was since you have been visiting PRA often, so that was the workshops and seminars which are being daily conducted in the Punjab Revenue Authority, inviting 20 to 25 business personnel, including the government officials who are responsible for withholding agents, and thousands of those workshops have been conducted in our premises. So this is again answer to the presentation query that who will I have to pay tax, what I have to pay tax, and this helps us in improving that. Um, we have also taken leave from the KPRA that penalties and these things they do help us. We like FBR has created an intelligence and investigation unit and have declared one of our office as police station, which so we have not lodged any FIR, but it has also helped us.
Thank you.
So,
A quick question for all of you, Dr. Javed Saab, Nurul Haq Balod Saab, Wasif Mehman Saab, and Fauzi Iqbal Saiba. When we talk about, or we have been talking about behavioral, about nudges, we talk about taxpayer compliance. Is there any room for nudges for tax administrators to improve their enforcement? I mean, is there sort of, maybe anybody would like to sort of answer that?
Uh, I would like to answer that. I think I think we are taking it the wrong way. Number one, I wish the best of health for everybody, but COVID was really a watershed year for the government of Punjab. Government sort of withdrew, and still our tax collection did not fall apart. The maximum switchover towards digital-based payment actually happened during the COVID year. And like they said that when we reduced taxes from 16 to 5%, the net impact was that actually tax collection improved. So without being cynical, another couple of rounds of COVID and we would be on the right track of things, because I personally believe that when the government sort of overextends and thinks too much into taxation, we tend to put ourselves into the shoe of the taxpayer, which is wrong. We have to put our house in order. Now let's come back to the government side or the tax administration side. I would not call it nudges at the moment. I don't know how you want to actually describe it, but our procedure of or our thinking in government is exactly the reverse. We first because I worked in the finance department, we work out the expenditure for the year, the wish list. And then that wish list, when it is finalized and compiled, then everything, the resources are made to adjust to the wish list. It should be the other way around, that this is the pot of money which is available, and now we have to trim down the wish list. No, it is actually the other way around, that this is the wish list and now you have to grow the taxes from somewhere. I'm not a great fan of absolute numbers. The absolute numbers looks fantastic when you look at sales revenue or from the services tax, and I think that is the fallacy or sort of a false sort of a impression which is generated in the finance department, that we have this big potential here in the as far as the services sales tax is concerned, and it can generate billions and billions of rupees for us. So there is no need to worry if we sort of over exceed on the expenditures. Because I have worked as DS resources for 2 years, I know that whenever we used to make the budget, it's the expenditure first. What is going to be the size of the annual development program? What is going to be size of the current expenditure? And right at the end, he will bear me out. When do the taxation people come in the budget cycle? Somewhere end of April or May, and they are told that this is going to be your target. There is no deliberation, say in September or October, looking at the trends or being more analytical about the thing, or the resource mobilization committee is is a committee of the government in which ministers are member, and that is one committee of which no minister wants to be the member of. I can tell you that. All the three ministers, I've experienced three or four different governments. They curse themselves when they are actually members of these committees, because they say that we don't want to be responsible for increasing the taxes. Number one, should we have a resource mobilization committee at this stage when to involve politicians which are really not eager to actually push the envelope? So if you want nudges, or if you want some sort of a procedural change, please start at from the finance department, from the planning and development department, and then move yourself forward all the way to the taxpayers. I think our tax authorities and agencies are fairly doing good enough work, and you can see the difference between the old model, which is the excise and taxation, which has really not changed since the department was set up, and the Punjab Revenue Authority. you know uh, their ramp up was much quicker. They are still sort of trying to wrestle themselves from being an administrative department. And the second issue is when you talk about experimentation. Great idea, I love experimentation, but spaces for experimentation have to be created within the government, and that's not easy. Ask the excise and taxation department about it. Because if the urban unit, for example, comes with a new innovation that we want to be tested, I will take it to my chairman planning and development board, because he is my administrative head, and he would say that, Umar, I would like to fund it, but first I need the buy-in of the excise and taxation department. So and the finance department is nowhere in this thing. There is, at the moment, if you look at the structure, and I think I might be very, very accurate, we have resources. We have deputy secretaries of resources, additional secretary of resources, but resources is a very vague term. Resources are also your federal revenues. So he gets sort of acknowledged for something for which he has not made any tax effort. So the deputy secretary of resources, if he gets 85 or 86% of his target, he's already a great deputy secretary of resources. The second resources are basically the loans that you get. That too are also considered as resources. There is no deputy secretary or additional secretary of taxation in the finance department, whose sort of work would be the policy of taxes or the tax effort. So there are no connections between the finance department and the spending department. And I would not call it nudges. I would call that there is a need to change the procedure of thinking. And you have to create spaces within the department, like perchance we are having this workshop, but this should be a regular feature in any provincial government, that you should be having a quarterly sort of a review of where we are going with taxation. So there is some sort of line of accountabilities and authorities. But 20 years have passed since I left that particular position, and the same thing is being repeated again. Right at the end of the day, you've already secured 85%, 86% from the Federal Board of Revenue. Great. Now you are left with 15%. Deputy Secretary of Resources is told what are our external capital inflows. That will take care of some of it, and then you are left with a percentage in single percentage for numbers. That's all. That's all. So there is no effort. There is absolutely no effort. And when they come with their target, what is the excise and taxation?
45 billion.
45 billion. Okay, let's push it to 50 billion. No trend analysis, nothing, no percentage, absolutely nothing. All the time which is spent in the budget cycle is basically developing the expenditure estimate. And the expenditure estimate, Dr. Shahid Kardar once told me, and this was 20 years ago. He said, Umar, you are Deputy Secretary of Resources, but you are a misplaced person in the finance department, because provinces are expenditure machines. They are not resource machines. So till you do it, till you sort of change them into resource machines, and the last NFC has not done a great favor. They've made them even greater expenditure machines. I'll conclude it, simply by giving a personal example. My father is 85 years old. He's got a heart problem. So a couple of weeks ago, his heart rate fell, his pulse rate sort of dropped. We did not know what to do, so we called the doctor, and the doctor said that there is a serum electrolyte test which you have to do, which is basically a kidney function test. Something is going wrong as far as the electrolytes is concerned. That's very sensitive. So when the test came, his potassium levels were very high. And I asked the doctor what to do about it. And his solution was very simple. He said, cut on the oranges and give him a soda mint. So as far as the provincial government is concerned, they should cut on the oranges which they are getting from the federal government, because till the time you keep on passing these big FBR increases to the provinces, there would be no incentive to look at their own tax collecting agency and to look at them seriously. So you should really sort of reverse the NFC backwards. Let me give you my final sort of example. In 2003, the maximum which a province could get in Punjab was 42% of the entire NFC. And we were so happy with that number that we used to do all forward planning at 42%. And when Mr. Musharraf made it 45%, people were over the moon. We have gone beyond 50%. So you've really sort of put the provinces on expenditure steroids, and they think of now big projects because the money is so much available to them that, you know, when they are making the choice between the social expenditure and the hard infrastructure expenditure, uh, the option is always for the hard infrastructure expenditure because money is amply available. Previously, it used to be, we don't have the money for the road or the metro, let's spend it on health and education. So, you know, I think with that, I would conclude. I'm sorry I've taken a lot of your time, but, you know, this is very, very important, and thank you for raising this question.
Thank you, Dr. Umar. I think this was very useful and something as provincial taxation we think about it. These are all the concerns we need to think about. So it will be a mess. I know we are running out of time, but it will be a mess if I don't give opportunity to Fazal Amin Saab, who has been instrumental in designing the reward scheme. So Fazal Saab, just a couple of minutes, and then we are going to switch to the next presentation. Thank you.
Good results. Good results from the SMS. Presently, KPRA compliance ratio is 75%. Filing ratio is 75%, which I believe is the most amongst the provinces. And even FBR, this ratio is not more than 60%. So there are other intervention of the World Bank as well. There is a DLI where they measure the compliance ratio. So the multiple intervention have resulted in good compliance ratio. 2 years back, we even touched 95% of the filing ratio, which is unprecedented in Pakistan. It is available on record. We can show that we touched 95% in 2019 to 2020 year. That was 95%, and presently we are hovering around 75%. So the SMS intervention and the other World Bank intervention, they did work, and KPRA, and now we have more than 22,000 taxpayers. So attaining a ratio of more than 75% is a good indicator. As far as the current experiment is concerned, we are very much excited about. We jointly designed it. I am gracious that you accepted my proposal, and we are looking forward to it. Ma'am is on board. We have recently sent that summary to the secretary, and finances will be available as committed by the finance secretary. So we are looking forward to that. Thank you, sir.
Just thank everyone for participating in this session. We are going to right away move to the next session, and Dr. Mushtaba Pracha is going to take a lead on that.